Hey there, YouTube, and everyone else on social media. Back for the second video. Again, learning, but I am still using my phone to record these. And this one's not going to go over well with some people I know, especially if you're in the education establishment. But I learned a long time ago that being a Republican by itself was social suicide. It's what you got to accept if you're going to be right, because 90% of the time, conservatives are right. So let's talk about ballots. Now, honestly, this is a second take, but we got a ballot in the mail, and it's for the local school levy. And I marked mine like that. As you can see, I marked no. And I don't regret it one bit, and I'm not going to regret it. I'll tell you why. The schools are to the point where they're not worth putting money into until reforms are made, and the education establishment won't make the reforms because they don't want to. All they want is the more money. They don't want to fix the problem. To illustrate a point, since 1970, and most of this video I'm going to use 1970, I am going to try and put the links in the description so I can back up my crap, because yesterday I said that's one thing I prefer to do. But the National Assessment for Educational Progress was started in 1970. They did do a revision in 2004, but they double tested that year so they could do a continuation of their long-term trend line for math, reading, and writing. So since 1970, the results have been almost flat. And I'm going to use, as an example, they have just for 1992, for 12th grade average reading scores, out of a possible 500, they scored 292. Now the scores are 285. That is a reduction, in fact. So, I mean, yes, you could say it's statistically very little, but we should see improvement. Why? Because also, if you go to the Department of Education site, you find out how much we are spending. So, when you look at how much we're spending in total per student, depending on which column you use, at the Digest of Education Statistics, the total and current expenditures per pupil in student public education secondary schools, selected years, 1919 through 20, and it's all in constant 2018 dollars. So this is adjusted for inflation. It's not eaten up by inflation. That's a key thing to remember. People will always say, oh, well, you got to factor inflation. Well, we're going to factor inflation. So we're using constant 2018 dollars. Sometimes some of the statistics I have are 2019. I've seen some from 2020 even. But just on column 4, total expenditures per pupil and average daily attendance. In 1970, those were, in adjusted dollars, $6,691. In total expenditures and current expenditures, it would have been $5,471. Unadjusted for inflation, you're talking like $800. But for adjusted for inflation on those two different columns, 6,403. In 2017, it was $13,094. In current expenditures, it was, in 1970, $5,471, and in 2017, in total expenditures in 2018 dollars was $15,000. And current expenditures was $13,000. So effectively, by the time you get to 2020, we've tripled the dollars. I even saw a statistic that when I figured it up, it was more than tripled the dollars since 1970. That's per student. That's adjusted for inflation, from $600 to over $15,000. In 2017, it's not quite tripling, but it's more than doubling. Period. Yet at the same time, we're still seeing education scores, and that's per student, down around the area of flat per student. That's not even counting for it. So you can't even say, well, look at the change in enrollment. Enrollment's only been at about a 10 to 20% increase. We've changed the number. People say the class sizes were too small. So we ended up with, let me find the appropriate column. Public school student to teacher ratio, 1970, was 22.4, and in 2017 it was 15.4. So we can use consistent, and it's actually projected, it was according to this chart at the Department of Education, we're expected to remain flat around 15.4. So you have smaller class sizes. When it comes to salaries, the average public school teacher in salaries in constant 2018 dollars, 1970, $57,834, and in 2018 or 2017, let's go back to 2017, $62,143. So they not only had their pay keep up with inflation, they got a little more. The argument of we need to spend our salary on supplies, that's not right. But we keep increasing the amount that gets spent. Where is that money going? Sounds to me like the people that are in the establishment want to keep it that way, so that we keep the sympathy keeps going to teachers saying we need to pay more, we need to put money into schools. And yet we also, in addition to flat math, reading, and writing scores, we see our values being undermined with critical race theory, which is an extension of critical theory. So they have Marxist thought being used as a lens for history. When I was in school, we learned about the civil rights movement. We learned about segregated schools and the violence of the 50s and 60s. We learned about that, but we didn't learn it through a Marxist lens. That's what critical race theory is. The LGBTQ movement. You've got kids coming home saying, I'm transgender. I had it happen to a friend of mine. She took an approach toward a daughter thinking she was trans, of basically total immersion, and within a month the girl realized, oh, I'm not trans. I'm just a girl that likes things that are traditionally done by boys. And even a couple of those were only a couple of things, like playing first-person shooter video games and liking anime. They talk about banning books. Well, you know what? Both sides try that crap. The left wants to ban To Kill a Mockingbird. The right's having an issue with Mouse. And it's not that it's teaching about the Holocaust. It's that it's having nudity in language, from what I understand. I will admit I have not read that book. So, first thing, reform that needs to happen, we have to have school choice. It's the only way to keep these people honest. Because if they go back on their word and stick stuff back into the schools that we don't like, take them to another school. They still get educated. If people are so worried about kids getting educated, does it really matter whether it happens at a public school, a private school, or a home school? It shouldn't. What it's about is money. And their only solution is more money. More money. Well, I got news for you. The money needs to stop. The only way they listen, and I was on Facebook, got into some Facebook debates leading up to finally making my own videos, said, no, I'm not voting for the school levy, and everyone should vote no and take their kids out of those schools. Why? And I laid out the reasoning that this public schools are not doing the job. If money was the solution, we would have seen improvements on the national, get the right term, National Assessment for Educational Progress. That's a constant yardstick. You might not like that yardstick, but it's a consistent yardstick. If you're going to measure, you got to have a way to measure progress and whether you're doing the job. People that object to it don't want that measurement. So vote no on the school levy, vote no on the next school bond, wherever you are. I mean, yes, vote February 8th if you got one coming up here in Washington, but if you're in Montana, if you're in the South, if you're in New York, California, vote no. And just keep voting no, because the only people who didn't want to listen until I withheld my vote, announced I was withholding my vote for more money. And if enough of us start voting no, maybe they'll start actually listening. So I'll try and put the links in the description below so you can actually see for yourself what I'm talking about. And you all have a nice day, and hopefully with the next video I'll learn a little more about how to do this. And yes, I have ideas for a video, a different channel name, but it's just going to have to live with what I got. And of course, like, share, subscribe. Apparently you have to subscribe and help push the videos a little bit if you care about really care about education, not just talk about it and spend more money. We got to get the word out, because of course YouTube wants to, and the other tech giants want to play whack-a-mole and shut down conservatives. Otherwise, have a nice day.